o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And Karen, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. The next item of business on the calendar is approval of the agenda. However, I do have a correction. Due to a glitch, I guess the best way to say it, when Stacy was typing up the agenda, it automatically, Microsoft Word automatically inserted the number 5 next to March 12th, so it numbered everything after that off afterward. So approval of the minutes should actually be number 4. Unfinished business would actually be 5. New business will be 6. Staff comments is 7. Public comments is 8. Board comments would be 9, and adjourn would be 10. And if you can see where it just made that, so I do want to point that out, that we had a typographical anomaly. It just added its own number there for us. So we would need to make an amendment to the agenda to correct that. Does anybody have any questions? Do I have them?
Move to adopt the agenda as corrected.
Okay, second.
Second.
Thank you, Becky. Any additional discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the March 4th regular meeting, the March 12th special called meeting, and the March 15th special called meeting. For everyone's recollection, March 5th was our regular meeting, which we held upstairs. The March 12th was what we called the meeting for the election, since we were all in the office at the same time, and in case there was any matters that we needed to discuss. But there was no business on that. And then the March 15th was the approval of the results. Those were those. So everyone's had an opportunity to review those minutes. And is there any motion to approve minutes as they were presented?
I move we approve all the minutes or just the March 5th minutes?
You can do all of them since it's all under one.
For all, I move that we approve all of the minutes for all the meetings.
I say the approval.
Okay. Is there any additional discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, carries 4-0. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is unfinished business. Item A is the polling place agreement. Ms. Godfrey, do you want to bring us up to date on that?
What you have in your binders is the latest version of the agreement that we have been working on for the polling place agreement. There were, after we received this one, there was only one part that I had a question about taking out, and that's on the page where you sign. Before we made the changes to have me sign on behalf of the board and then have the board chair attest to me signing, there was a line for an authorized signer and a title, and that's kind of, just repeating what that top line said. So that's the only change I see, other than the notices, correspondence, and any applicable payments to the owner should be sent to. I didn't know if the board would want to take that out because we will not be doing payments for polling locations, but those are the only two things that I saw that might want to be changed before we go for a final draft.
I had one question. Let me find it on mine. It's line item number, it's second page, 5A, voting. Is that units or unites? I don't, units? Is supposed to be
Yeah.
voting units?
What?
Is that
Units,
spelled?
it's just misspelled.
Okay. so make that change as well.
And the only other question was an educational process for me,
Uh-huh.
TIS. TIS. On number 1B, where it says written notice of TIS intent, I had to look that up. It is a contraction of it is, which it says written notice, it is intent. Is it?
What are,
I guess
Wait,
is
whatever
that,
else
Yeah,
not
yeah, this,
It's
I think it's
1A.
supposed to be
Yeah.
This?
Yeah,
1B.
1B, okay. I was looking at A and I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so it should say written notice of
Nope.
this intent?
I'm questioning it because it might be a legal use of the word TIS. I've never seen
no,
it
I don't
before.
think it is, I think it's I actually, one of the other attorneys in our office did that, and I think that's probably a typo,
Okay.
so.
so
Okay.
just this.
Okay.
All right.
All right, so I'll submit, if those are the only corrections that you
That I
have,
saw.
I will submit those to, the attorney's office to have those changes made, and then we'll have a final draft that we can vote on for approval.
So we're gonna take out the word payment since there is not
I
any
believe-
monetary, and we've took out that paragraph.
Yeah,
So-
we took out that paragraph, so I think that really, we wouldn't need that in there.
Yeah, if they wanted, they could also, if you wanted to vote on it, on the condition that these changes
With those
are made,
changes.
that
Okay.
would,
Yeah.
that would be appropriate, I mean, it's up to you either way.
Did she want to strike out this entire thing?
Yes.
I was wondering if notice and correspondence might ought to remain,
It should still be in there.
because if they,
So that they know to
take
mail
the
it.
payments out, but,
Well, it says it above it, though. If you read, it says notices
Oh,
and
I
correspondence
see.
to the elections office should be sent
Okay,
to.
it's two
So it's
places.
like redundant to put
Right.
that there.
But if you want the correspondence to the owner, to the school or whoever,
Or the property.
do you need an indication for whoever you're gonna sign the agreement with to
So
do
you
it?
think we should just take out the payments portion and leave the
Yeah.
rest of it? Okay.
Yeah.
So we know what address to mail to the,
Okay.
to like the school, or if it is
Yeah.
like Hinton's precinct to the community center, that we have their address then on there.
Or a PO box.
The mailbox, correct, okay. All right, so just take out the,
Hey,
any applicable payments. So notices and correspondence to the owner should be sent to, and let them put
Okay.
their address on that line. Okay,
All right.
perfect.
well, no, to the owner would be out.
to the owner.
To the owner of the property,
The owner of the
they're
property.
gonna put their
Okay.
address on that line.
That's what
I
it
got
is.
you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Does everybody understand where we're going with that? Okay,
Yep.
all right. All right, so, given the changes on item number 1B, from tis to this, changing number 5A from voting unites to voting units, and then above the signatures saying notice, correspondence should be, to the owner should be sent to, and then taking out any applicable payments, and then changed authorized, what,
Just strike through authorized signer and title
okay,
and omit that from the agreement.
okay. Authorized signer and title, okay, all right, very good. So then, with those changes in mind, we can then execute these agreements if we so vote. Terry, did you have any changes or anything else you saw on that? Nope, got it, we're good. Okay, she said we captured them. All right, so with that in mind, is anyone comfortable offering a motion with those changes and then approving this document?
I make a motion to accept the changes that we just discussed.
Okay, and then we can execute the
Motion.
agreement?
Yes.
Okay, so you wanna,
And execute the agreement.
perfect, thank you.
Second motion.
Okay, you second that. All right, any additional discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Terry voted in favor as well. Thank you. Okay, heading in the right direction with that. All right, the next item on the agenda is appointment of a vice chair. In just a wee little bit, we're gonna have a Board of Elections training presented by our attorney, Ms. Karen Shuda, so we'll get there in just a minute. But in the meantime, in the event that I am not present to attend a meeting, the vice chair is the person who would conduct the meeting. And so, other than that, in the bylaws, there is no other responsibilities listed. And again, we're gonna have the training, and so I don't know if there's anything else that's gonna be added by the attorney about the vice chair's role, but to my knowledge, that is all that is required of a vice chair. But it does add something to whoever's plate it is, if they are the vice chair, to have to conduct the meetings in my absence. I will do my best to not put anybody in that position, but I do have daughters who sometimes are very demanding of my time unexpectedly. Like last week I had to go to Athens on Tuesday, last minute. So anyhow, do I have anyone who would like to make a motion?
Yes.
Or a nomination, I should say, I'm sorry.
I nominate Terry Franzen.
Okay. Do I have any other nominations? Okay. Terry, you have been nominated by Miss Becky to serve as the vice chair. Are you willing to accept this nomination? I do. Okay. All right. Do I have a motion then that we nominate Terry Franzen to serve as vice chair?
I move that we nominate Terry Franzen to serve as the vice chair.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I second the
Right.
nomination.
Okay. Do we have any additional discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Terry, congratulations. You are now the vice chair for the Board of Elections for Pickens County. Thank you. Thank you for your willingness to be there for us. Okay. So at this time, the next item on the agenda is the Board of Elections training. Everyone should have a packet in front of them.
And I have extras if people that are here.
Terry, did you
want-
receive a copy via email? Okay, I'm gonna turn this around now so that Karen can talk. If you're missing parts, obviously Mary's recording it so you can pick up there.
Do we want to move your phone over
Yeah,
here?
that's
maybe?
fine.
Okay.
Okay, so there we go.
All right, we're moving the phone too. So, okay, and this is going to be, kind of a quick overview. Especially some of it's a good refresher for people who've been on the board for a while. And then it's also just kind of some important points about state law and like requirements. So we're going to kind of review the Open Meetings Act because that is always very important and something that everyone should be aware of because there are consequences to violating it. Also the Open Records Act, especially with an election year. That is a time usually when a lot of those come in during the year. We're going to talk about social media a little bit. We'll run through some of the board duties and also staff duties just to familiarize yourself. And then just real quick, being now like appointed members of the government, there's like the state ethics rules. We'll just run over those real quick just to kind of, they're fairly obvious, but we'll run through those.
Doesn't hurt to remind us, Karen, that's for sure.
Okay, and again, this is very quick. Always, if you have questions, you can always either send them to the chair, send them to Stacy, and she can compile questions and send them to our office. Again, we teach this open meetings. We have a 6-hour course that we do on open meetings and open records. Not doing that tonight, so it's very just a brief overview. So just so you know, at any time, so basically since it's a 5-member board, a quorum is going to be 3 members. So at any time there's a quorum, so at least 3 of you. And just thinking if you are discussing elections business or anything with the elections, it needs to be in public. There's a few exceptions to that, but the general rule is if there's 3 of you, you run into each other at the grocery store. If you're going to talk, you can't talk elections. And so that's basically the general requirement anytime that there's a quorum. There are exceptions, so, purpose of inspecting physical facilities or properties. So if you, wanted to all go and view like a new polling location or something like that, that wouldn't, constitute a meeting. Of course, you can't go off to the side and start discussing things that should be in a meeting, but, or going to meetings, statewide, training meetings, like Secretary of State has training meetings, stuff like that. That does not count as a meeting, even though all of you may be there. And the training may be on elections, but that doesn't count as a public meeting. If you all go down and talk to the legislature at some point, although they've just finished, but that doesn't count. And then of course, if you all go to some kind of, like say there's a thank you for poll watchers or something like that. And we've done this in other counties, and sometimes we'll just put out a notice to the public that just says, there may be a quorum at this, thank you party for poll workers. However, we won't be discussing business. It's not required since it's not a meeting, but sometimes just from a public relations standpoint, it might be a good idea. And this is basically, the Attorney General, if you are going to a gathering, trying to evade the, oh, well, no, we were at a social function, but it was, the purpose was trying to evade that. Obviously, the Attorney General will take a look at that. One thing the Attorney General has also said, sometimes boards will try to meet like 2 at a time or something like that, to avoid a meeting. And if you're trying to get around the meeting that way, the Attorney General does frown on that. So again, anytime 3 of you at least talking about business, public should be there. That's the important thing, open government, public may not want to be there. You may be just all talking to an empty room, but they do have the option to be there.
And we have to call an official meeting.
Yes. And so, and I'll go, there's some notice requirements, but you're basically giving the public the option to be there. Any radio or television station or, Pickens County blogger or YouTuber or anything, if they want to record the meeting, they're allowed to record the meeting as long as they're not interfering. So, if they have cords running everywhere or anything, they have to step back, but they are allowed to record the meeting. You can set some rules for attendance, don't disrupt the meeting, things like that, public comments, those sort of things, because the focus, even though the public is allowed, the focus is on you and you doing business of the board. So again, all votes have to be in public. So anytime you take a vote, again, that will be as part of the public meeting. And then of course we have to make the public aware that we're all meeting so that they do have the opportunity to be there. So you all have set your regular meeting schedule, which is, the first Tuesday of every month. I think that's already on the website and that's published. We try to get the agenda out, reasonably so that people know what is going to come on the agenda. If you need to call a special called meeting, that is always appropriate. We like to have at least 24 hours to do that and try to get an agenda out there and to kind of notify, it's not going to be able to get published, in the Legal Oregon or something, but to put it out on, the county's Facebook or website or anything like that. If for some reason like something happens and there needs to be an urgent meeting, that can happen. Like say something happens to a polling location, and we, Stacy's like, we need the board together. We've got to figure out what's happened, or it's flooded or something, and it's 2 days before the election. I know, sorry.
Did she really just say that?
I know. Okay. There are also emergency meetings that can be held with less than 24 hours notice. Hopefully that definitely will never need to be, but that option is available for any kind of government body, not just, boards of elections, if that happens to happen.
Is there guidelines for those type of meetings?
So the reason why it's an emergency does have to be recorded in the minutes. I've actually don't think I've ever been a part of an emergency meeting, but I could see something, no, I won't do a disaster again. 12 hours before the polls open, Big Cat is on fire, or
Right.
something.
Tornado.
Yes, tornado would be a good, something that.
Y'all.
We're on one tonight.
So, I have actually never had to be a part of like an emergency meeting. I have had special called meetings that needed to be called. Usually it's just, a few days, or they want to tack something on to an agenda that's already been published. So the agenda generally will post at the meeting site, make it available to the public, and I know Stacy's working on getting a little bit more access to the website so that she has more access, correct? Versus right now, it's like there's like another step, so it takes
It's
some time.
it's tucked up under the county.
Yeah,
Says-
so,
yeah.
you can include, well, you should put everything you expect to be on the agenda. That doesn't mean you can't add something to the agenda. You would vote on that before accepting the agenda. But we do like, to give that notice to the public to try and have everything on the agenda. And this is pulled from your bylaws. The board, I don't know when the bylaws were last voted on.
In 2021.
Okay, and that's something, and I meant to look, there should be a procedure in there for as far as amending, but that is, the board can always amend their bylaws too. So currently, board members will give input, the chair will set the agenda with input from other board members. Again, before adopting the agenda, you can ask to add an agenda item. That would be a majority vote. However, if you've already approved the agenda and you realized you need to add something to the agenda, then it would be 4 people would have to vote to add it to the agenda after the agenda's been approved. We prefer not to add anything to the agenda if possible, just because of that public notice, but you are allowed to. Motions, and this is more just like a practice tip. So even though everyone up here, they're discussing and they're talking about, and everyone knows what you're talking about, just remember that this is going to be reduced to writing and in print. So it's important sometimes to think about that to make sure that it's clear when you're discussing or making the motion, that it will make sense in the minutes later. So we try to avoid just saying so moved, just make the motion and then state what it's for. It's not incorrect to say so moved after discussion, but best practice is to go ahead and state what that is for. Again, motions have to be seconded. Majority of those present is required to pass a motion. In your bylaws currently, the chair can make or second motions, but she only gets a vote in the case of a tie. But she is allowed to make and second motions. So an executive session, it will probably be rare that y'all have to deal with them, but that is a situation in which we are allowed to close the meeting to the public. That would be, someone would make a motion to go in executive session for one of the reasons that's allowed. I'll discuss that in a second. You would vote to do that, and then usually the easiest thing to do is to make the public then go outside of the room while there's an executive session. Minutes are taken during an executive session, but they're not public. And then the chair executes an affidavit that does become part of the public minutes that the executive session was held for a proper reason, that it wasn't in the public. So real estate matters y'all will never deal with unless you're buying a new elections building. But that's probably one of the main reasons there's executive sessions. Personnel matters, if you wanted to do a review or something with Stacy, that can be closed to the public. don't know that y'all would deal with cybersecurity stuff, but that's another reason, to kind of protect whatever that is. Probably the most common would be any pending or potential litigation. So if someone sues the county over an election matter or adds the county to a suit that they have against the state, they just passed a bunch of election bills. Sometimes these plaintiffs, in addition to suing the state, will add counties. Those are reasons that you can close the meeting to the public. What happens in executive session should try and stay in executive session. So, and a lot of times, if it's closed for pending litigation, you're receiving legal advice. There are certain things that are subsequently voted on in public, but aren't, but you can discuss them in executive session, like a cybersecurity contract or something like that. You can discuss the details in executive session, and then you come out and vote on the contract in public.
We also vote on the minutes from the executive session in public after the executive session is held, correct?
I have to double check on that, actually. They don't become public.
Right, but we vote on approving them
Yes,
at
you
the
can
public
vote on
meeting.
approving them, but then they stay in like an envelope.
Okay.
Yeah. The public participation policy, and again, this is a function of your own policies. You don't actually have to allow public comments. Most boards and commissions do allow that. That is, an opportunity for the citizens to discuss with you. There are some restrictions as far, once you do open it up for public comments, there are, First Amendment considerations. You are what we call a designated public forum, which differs from, say, just a park, where you're standing in a public park and can basically say whatever you want. You can restrict it somewhat because you're still trying to conduct the county business. So, someone can't stand in the middle of the room and just go on and on and on and on and disrupt that business. So you're allowed to put reasonable restrictions, so time limits. And I don't think the public comments say it's restricted to election matters, but that's another thing. You can restrict it to items on the agenda or just election matters. And I believe it's 5 minutes folks have, so 5 minutes. And currently your policy is to limit it to 30 minutes total. So again, those are items that the board has voted on previously. And so your current rules, citizens may only speak once per meeting, submit additional comments in writing to the board, 30 minutes total, and then 5 minutes for each person to speak.
May I ask you a question? It says under the executive session, it says discussion without consent of the entire board, not just a quorum, but the entire board.
I'm sorry.
It's one page back. What happens in the executive session stays in the executive session. At the very bottom, it says the entire board. not just
Well,
the
I'm
board.
sorry. It should be majority of the board.
Majority.
Yes. Same thing with attorney-client privilege. So attorney-client privilege belongs to the board as a whole. So not just, one individual on the board. So say I put out a memo or give you advice that is attorney-client privileged, but you do want to release it to the public. That would be, the board could take a vote on that, and if the majority of the board wants to release it, that's, as the client, that's your prerogative. But again, you have to remember, you're operating as the board, so majority.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine, sorry. So the public participation policy, again, that is something that you have drafted. There are, some boundaries due to First Amendments, and, one example I like to give is if you're gonna hear one side of an argument, you have to hear the other side of the argument. So, you can't have a policy that says, we only let people speak that are in favor of our policies, and we're not gonna hear from anyone opposed to the policy. So that's always, if you're gonna hear pro, you gotta hear con. The minutes, again, will be recorded. Stacy handles that kind of thing. Again, they're an official record of the county. They should record how everyone voted. And Stacy handles all of that, so you don't have to worry about that. All right, open records. It's basically everything. That's what I tell people. When you're acting on behalf of the board in elections, it's all going to be a public record. There may be exemptions from it being released to the public, but it's still a government record. But the statute on that, if it is prepared, maintained, or received in the performance of a government duty, and that includes documents, papers, letters, photographs, maps, it is a public record. So it's essentially everything that you've done in your duty. And it doesn't mean necessarily that you have to keep 10 copies of it or something, but it is going to be a public record. So I want to emphasize, oh, yes.
One quick question. Aren't there certain exceptions to that for employee records or something of that nature?
Yes, so there are exceptions. So even though it's still a government record, there may be requirements to redact certain information, like employees' addresses and phone numbers and family members. Those get redacted from documents. Attorney-client privilege gets redacted. Since most of you will not be handling that production part of it, it may be someone makes a request and Stacy might have to ask you for a document, but generally she'll be handling any redactions. And that's when we do the longer 6-hour class that we have. We go into a lot of details about what's not public.
And there has been times where board members have been asked to provide emails between board members or between like a board member's Secretary of State. I don't handle that, but our IT would handle that.
Yeah, so as much as you can, please try to use your official emails. It makes it so much easier. Even so, if someone who's known you a long time, so just sends it to your personal email address, I recommend then forwarding it to the county email address and then replying from that county email address. Because then that way, if an Open Records Act request comes in, Stacy can have IT pull it, because it'll now be in there, and you don't have to be searching through your phone and forwarding everything to Stacy if they make a request. So anything that's in like a public device or a public account, like an email address, is going to be subject to the Open Records Act. Again, there may be exemptions to that, like attorney-client privilege.
I have a question.
Yes.
Does that mean that if the my Board of Elections email is on my personal phone, that my personal phone is?
No. So if they will have your public, they'll have your public email address on the county servers. So they would pull anything from there. So your public account would be subject to the Open Records Act, but we don't have to pull it from your cell phone.
Okay.
But if you use your personal email address for business and someone asks for that, we don't have access to that. IT doesn't have access to that, so we have to, come and have you do it.
That won't ever be a problem.
So,
That's why it's not on my phone.
I know, and that's why a lot of like county appointed boards and planning commissions and stuff, a lot of people use their personal email addresses. I'm like, stop, don't do that. It just makes it a lot easier if you're using county email. If you're using the county email and it's personal, it may be subject to the Open Records Act because someone says, I want all emails this person said on this date. It may be you're talking about where to eat dinner after the meeting. That will go out. But as long as if they ask for some reason, and sometimes when they ask, they'll ask like, I want this commissioner's emails about, this polling place from his personal email account. Usually when they do that, they already know about it. But it just makes it so much easier with everyone using their their county accounts. Because again, the state law doesn't care that you're using, Gmail account, or your personal phone number to text. If it's about county business and the election, or for elections, with your role on the board, it's gonna be subject to that. So, yeah, and I don't think anyone would do this, but there have been politicians and other people who've learned this the hard way. You can't circumvent the Open Records Act by using your personal phone number or email. So they may think it's harder to get to, but usually someone has found out about it, and that's why they're asking. So yes, purely personal documents on your personal device or account is not going to be subject to the act. So if that comes up and it just makes it messier. So, because then we have to go through a personal, device or personal emails and make sure this was part of your role as a board member, this is personal, and so we just prefer not to do that. You guys will not be working on production, but I just, when Stacy might be emailing 5 times, it's because we have to respond within, or Stacy has to respond within 3 days. Not necessarily to produce the records, but she has to either give them an estimate on how much it's gonna cost, or produce the records in 3 days, or tell them what date they will be ready. So one of those has to occur within 3 days. So it may be, we're getting the records for you in 2 weeks, but she has to be able to have a good basis for making that estimate, and that has to occur within the 3 business days. And this, you probably won't have to deal with. We do have, there's no requirement to create a document that doesn't exist, and that does kind of come up in elections sometimes, because they're like, well, I want a report of how many persons live here and voted here, and if it doesn't exist, Stacy does not have to spend her time trying to take it from 5 different sources to create like a new spreadsheet. Also, and I remind our clients this all the time, they're not required to answer questions. It's good sometimes from a public relations standpoint to answer questions. The Open Records Act really is just a way to get documents. It's sometimes easier to answer questions, but if it's like right in the middle of the election and everything's really busy, and a reporter or someone is just emailing questions and wanting questions, like she can just respond with, this is not a request for records, so I will not be responding at this time.
And my understanding is that if there is any question for her on anything, she is to come to you with it
Yes,
about that.
she can
That
do that,
is-
yes.
Okay.
But I do have to, and I know people want to answer questions, and sometimes it's easier to answer questions, but I just always remind them you don't have to.
And I'm sorry, ORA, O-R-A?
Open Records Act.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay,
I forget sometimes that
I know it's
used
in here,
to
but you gotta
my,
find it.
Yeah, you're used to the jargon.
I'm used to my, I threw the statute in just to, there's a lot that is election records.
Right.
So, the tally papers, returns, contract, basically anything. Now, it's not all subject to release, but it is an election record. It has its own retention schedules. You guys don't necessarily have to deal with that, but you just should be aware. OCGA 21-500 comes up a lot. So these are the materials, after election night that are going to get packed up and they're going to go to the clerk of Superior Court. And these are the items that are under seal. And the records that are under seal with the clerk of court are not subject to the Open Records Act. So, if you go to the next page where I talk about ballot images, this is probably the one that we get the most frequently, is that they want, people want new copies of the physical ballots. And but there is case law that because they're under seal, they're not subject to the Open Records Act. Back in 2021 with Senate Bill 202, they did change the law so that those ballot images, when you scan your ballot and it creates I think it's a TIFF image, that those are subject to the Open Records Act. And supposedly, I don't know if this has happened yet, the Secretary of State is supposed to be setting up a website, so now people make the requests to the department to get those ballot images. I think, did they create it yet? Well, all counties will just upload it to the Secretary of State. Okay, so now we can just direct people to the Secretary of State, and every single county for the entire state is supposed to be on their website. So when they created that new law, again, it was the ballot images that were created by the ballot scanners that became public. The physical ballots are, still tucked away under seal and in that custody. Now, caveat, there were a bunch of new election-related bills that just passed the General Assembly. I still haven't even gone through them all. I mean, it's like 7 or 8 that touch on elections. Again, the governor has 40 days whether to sign or let pass or veto. I have no idea if the governor is going to veto any of that. I gave Stacy just a quick summary of some of the things, but one of those is that, so the scanners currently, the images that come out are at 300 DPI. So SB 189 says that a person can request a higher resolution scan of ballots to 600 DPI, which is not what the machines do currently. It says that in that situation, I think it says superintendent or election official may access the ballots at the clerk's office. All they have to do is notify the clerk. And they have to scan all the ballots at 600 DPI. And the person making the request is allowed to watch the process, but they're not allowed to touch the ballots. So it says only the election official can touch the ballots, but the requester can watch it.
I know this isn't the time and place, but why?
To touch the ballots?
Go
Or
from 3 to 6. 3.
the 300 signature, I do not know. I don't know if they thought the scanner was 600 or if they thought the scanned images weren't high enough resolution. Now, I don't know if the scanner's resolution can be increased. I don't know if you've received any direction from the secretary. And again,
None of it's in effect yet.
notice in the effect, theoretically, the governor could veto it. I don't think he would. That particular bill has a lot in it. That one was probably the longest bill. So that may come in effect. If it's part of the Open Records Act, I mean, we can still charge for time that would take. And then also I think too, that once it gets scanned once at 600, and that might be something even to do as soon as the election's over, before someone makes a request.
So you have them already.
Go ahead and scan them at 600, and then you have them available at 600. That's just something to think about.
So like if we have 15,000 ballots, we would have to scan 15,000.
Yes.
And what about the capacity of holding that on our servers?
Right, the storage.
I have no idea.
And you said you can charge for that. Charge whom?
The requester. So I didn't put that in the presentation. Anytime someone makes an Open Records Act request, the county can charge for the time. You have to use the lowest paid person who has the ability to do it. So even if it's Stacy ends up having to do it because she needs a lower paid staff member to work on something else, we can only charge the rate of the, lower paid staff member. But, counties never come out whole on this, but I do, sometimes counties will just do them. I'm like, always try and get your costs back, because it's always a net loss. With some
It's
of
so much
these.
per page and everything too.
Yeah,
So
now,
there's-
we don't charge if it's like an electronic,
Mhm.
so we don't charge it just a paper copy, so
But if you're scanning and you're feeding, like
that, it will be.
that could be a costly.
I think it could be expensive, and I don't think the legislature thought about that, and
Right.
again, I don't know why they chose 600 versus 300,
Right.
and that may just have been, they thought the machines were 600, I don't know.
I don't know.
This one passed on the last day, and I think it had gone through many different versions, so.
If somebody were to request the ballots, let's say from the November election, if this were to pass, we would not be able to email it because the file size would be too large. So therefore, we would
Yes.
have to put it on a flash drive, and we do charge for our flash drives
Yes.
as well.
So, yes, and even, I forgot what it was, I think it was video, back when we had the video of the drop boxes, we had to put it on like an actual, hard drive, we charged for that.
Yeah.
Um,
So there is fees attached to depending
Yeah.
on,
so-
not just not the hourly. just-
So this, we'll see what happens, and then also the Secretary of State will hopefully put out some guidelines or tell people what's gonna happen, or if the scanners can be adjusted for higher resolution, because I imagine they probably scan slower, so it may be, that's why. Not sure.
Gotcha. Just made election records even more.
Yes.
Go.
Some things, this is when we talk about exceptions, and there are a lot of exceptions in not just the Open Records Act, but other parts of the law. People that go to the 6-hour class that we do get a lot of that, but for example, applications for voter registration, they're a public record, but they're not subject to the Open Records Act. Federal or state statute, like tax records or something, month and date of birth, social security numbers, things like that, those are always redacted from records.
And we still use floppy disks?
Where do I say
It's still
floppy
in the law,
disks?
though.
Oh,
It's still in the law.
You never know.
Okay,
Somebody
okay.
might chisel the stone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say, the law still, it still has the optical scanners, I think the lever, it's like they don't get rid of.
No.
They never
They
take.
add to it, they don't
add
take
to
it away.
yes.
Yeah. Gotcha.
All right. Optics matter, and we threw this in here. This has come out, recently in some other Georgia counties, much further south of here. Actually, this is elected official, really your appointed officials. Just remember, now you're an appointed official, people will follow you and they will take whatever you do and be like, oh, can you believe that appointed official? I saw him drinking a beer, or whatever. So that, comes out. I think it was Clayton County recently, a commissioner had too much to drink and was laying on the ground. And of course that went on social media and then the news, and just welcome to public role.
Yes.
So I just wanted to, sometimes it's helpful to remember, again, like say there was a vote and you were 3-2. It was 3-2 and you were someone who voted against whatever it was. That it's helpful, like if you're speaking to citizens or something, to distinguish between the board and your opinion. So, well, the board voted on this, or this is the board's position on this. I disagreed, and this is what I thought. Just sometimes that's helpful to make that distinction between the board's policy and then maybe your individual policy or your personal opinion. The board has to follow the rules set by the Secretary of State. You may personally or politically disagree with that, and so I think it's helpful just in social media or interacting with people to remind people between the two roles is always helpful. Again, open records implications, because that always catches people up. Yep, so just if you're trying to distinguish between your own opinions and then the positions of the board, just so it's not confusing, because now that you are a public official, people do pay more attention, and they may be, following your social media page.
We had a letter to the editor appear in the local newspaper last year, 2 years ago, and a previous board member responded, which was fine, but they responded using their title and everything, and I think that needed to be discussed with the board
Yeah.
before that response was made. But he could have made that without the title and there wouldn't have been a problem. So that's kind of where I see the distinction. Is that what you're trying to
Right,
basically?
I think it's just always a good idea to point out when you are bringing your own personal political opinion or personal opinion about a matter versus the board's.
Okay.
Unless, if you're speaking for, the board has discussed this and this is what the board's position is. So social media, I think it's helpful if you do have like a Facebook page or something. If you want to, sometimes it's helpful to set up a separate, this is my personal Facebook page, this is my Board of Elections Facebook page, and then, nope, okay. Nope.
Yeah. Not interesting.
One Facebook page is all I got, and that's it.
Because actually too, if you start talking about elections business on your Facebook page, someone might make an open record time request for it.
Yep.
So,
I'm not doing that. Wash my hands of it.
you might want to set it to private.
Yep.
Yeah, anything you say lasts and lasts and lasts, and trust me, people dig and find stuff on anyone, public officials, so just, beware. You're always a public official now, anywhere you're at, and you're basically, part of the Pickens County government, so that's always something to think about. We recommend when you're on social media, stick to more neutral comments or things like that, unless you are, again, emphasizing that you're acting or speaking in your personal. Avoid using personal devices and social media to handle board business. And we just advise, we can't tell you not to use your social media, but we, recommend against it, at least a problem. So the local act, so the General Assembly basically passed local legislation that created this board, and I forget how many years ago that was.
2021.
Okay. Oh, is it that recent? Okay.
House Bill 682.
And that bill specifies that you select a election supervisor. So Stacy, she's basically your employee, to administer and supervise the conduct of elections primaries and registration of electors. So you are also authorized to hire any full-time or part-time staff as needed, and they are the boots on the ground. So
We're more of an advisory board.
Yes.
We're not a working board. She handles the
Right,
day-to-day.
you have basically hired her to, and I just threw in a small amount of what she's doing. The sausage that gets made behind the scenes, processing voter registration applications, transfers, name changes, sex changes, that come up.
Yep.
Yes, you did. Yes. Handling, mail, deceased voters, felony voter changes, list maintenance, making sure people are in the right districts. She, goes out and checks the polling places. You do vote on the polling places and the precinct lines, but she does kind of behind the scenes work, candidate qualifying, which just occurred. All the testing of the equipment, just everything.
The poll workers.
poll worker
all
training,
Yeah.
finding them. I mean, and you guys assist with that a lot, especially being like community outreach. Is always very important, especially with poll workers. I think that's the one thing. And, you know, maybe even polling places and all that information, so. And then obviously voting, which I think UACABA can go out today if people have their actual ballots, but I don't know that anyone has the ballots yet. Did you get yours? Okay. So military ballots are already starting to go out the door for May
Yes,
primary.
she's on it. She's got it ready to roll.
And then of course, processing everything election night.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, you'll be setting policy of the board, you'll be overseeing the board, you'll be voting on precinct boundaries. So if that needs to change, you know, and there's requirements under the law about how far out before an election that you can change a precinct or polling place. I don't know that y'all have had any voter challenges. That is a process in Georgia law that's allowed where Pickens County citizens can challenge the residency of someone else in Pickens County, saying, you know, they've moved or this is not their permanent address, or there's a number of reasons. And that's kind of a hot topic right now. And there's a lot of counties that do, especially the metro Atlanta area, that do have these. And if anyone does file them, that will go in front of the board to basically, you would be the judge in that situation. You're also involved in like budgeting process and planning and deciding the staffing that's needed for the office, reviewing the provisional and overseas ballots, helping out on election night and certification of the results, the audits, the policies and procedures, and again, that community and public outreach is always really, really important. Sorry. Gonna throw this, we threw in ethics. This is actually state law. It's very, obvious things. The Pickens County Board of Commissioners also recently adopted an ethics policy. Currently, it doesn't apply to appointed boards, but they basically adopted the state law on ethics. What they put in, and there's what would apply to employees and themselves, is a process if someone is accused, of violating an ethics rule and what would happen. But basically put, loyalty to the government and your decisions on the board of elections. Obviously uphold the Constitution and federal, state, and local laws. Full day's labor for a full day's pay, and what is that? I don't think y'all get paid very much.
We don't put in a full day. We don't have to come for the meeting. But yeah.
Seek to find and employ more efficient and economical ways of getting tasks accomplished. Never discriminate, especially or seek special favors or privileges or remuneration for anything on the board. You can't bind the board essentially to anything. Or engage in business with the government that's going to enrich yourselves, especially to the detriment of the government. Never make a profit after something you learned confidentially. I can't actually think of anything that would affect with you, but expose corruption and uphold these principles. So again, those are obvious, but they're codified in state law. And
Yeah, it's kind of like, for me, this part is like, okay, I'm appointed and I'm like the nonpartisan, and so the people who are here who have been appointed by their parties have to also realize, like, take that hat off when they come to this table type thing, that they have to be looking at it for the good of all voters and that sort of stuff, so.
So, that is it. That is the very quick summary, introduction, reminder.
It's very informative, because I think, like I say, if we've done this, we need the refresher, and if we're new to it, we need to know where we actually stand, because we come in with one thing, and then, and like I say, we're you know, we're here to obviously be the advisors to things with Stacy, because she is, like you say, technically our employee, but at the same time, we know that she knows, and we've got to put our trust in her too, and let her run the office, and then she can come to us when it's time for a meeting to make adjustments or things
Yes.
like that too.
Yes,
So.
and it's always really helpful too for these reminders because it is an election year.
Mm-hmm.
Elections in the news, it's, you're under more scrutiny than you would be in a non-election year. You'll have more involvement from the community this year. Now, non-election years, it's not like Stacy's not doing anything. But people tend to like fall off and not pay as much attention in a non-election
Right.
year,
People
so.
always ask, what do you do when there's not an election? I said, there's never not an election.
Yeah, last year
And
we
that
had
is
municipal, so.
Actually, I don't know when you do your budgeting. So one of the bills is to have the Public Safety Commission elections. That will be next year. That is not, that'll be a new election.
Add it to the list.
That is not planned for currently, if you've already done any budgets for next year, budget planning for next year, but it will also be, it'll be a primary and a general.
Okay.
So that will have to be budgeted.
Primary will be in May, and then general will coincide with the November municipal election.
So it may just be that the primary you
And
have to
the
budget
public.
for. The Public Safety Commission.
It's a new commission that has been, or
Well,
a new role.
so there's currently a Public Safety Commission, and the members come from different districts in the state, but if they're voted on, or the way it has been, they're voted on statewide. A judge had found that not to be constitutional. Anyway, so the state bill basically is reworking it. And they're kind of just redoing, I guess.
So it will be for Pickens County?
It will be whatever district Pickens County is in for the
Okay.
public.
It's a district, okay.
Yes, so Pickens County voted, but it may be that, you know, Pickens and Cherokee and whatever other counties in that district would be voting for the same slate of candidates.
Gotcha.
And so they're gonna do the new elections, 2025, assuming again that the governor doesn't veto
Signs it,
that,
yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
so.
All right, did anyone have any other questions? I know we can, if we review this, we have any, email myself or Stacy, and then we'll get it to Karen.
Yeah, because just then you can compile it on to one
Yeah,
email or
Because we don't want to bombard her with a bunch of individual emails, so it'll be easier.
I just have one other question. You said you have a class. Is that something we're gonna take? As board members?
No.
Okay.
We have our 6-hour class, we actually teach for county clerks.
Okay.
So, but yes. I have taught, so I don't know when the next one is, the Gavrio.
Next year.
So next year sometime, that
Right.
Georgia Association of Voter Registration, you know, they have their annual conference. I have taught a class there before, it was just an hour version. And our office speaks at all kinds of things around the state. But that 6-hour class is for county clerks because they're the ones that are turning out almost all those open record tax
Yeah,
reports.
the open record, yeah. But that was it, I was gonna say, like, when there's Gavrio conferences and if there's webinars or anything like that, then Stacy can let us know so that we can, but they don't do a lot during election year because they're so busy with all the election stuff.
We
so.
don't do anything during a presidential election year.
Yeah.
And any board members that wants to follow the legislation for that Public Service Commission, it's House Bill 1312. And it would be a statewide special primary, and I'm sorry, it would be in June. The primary would be instead of May, and then it would coincide with the November general.
This would be 25.
25, correct?
But yeah, so that'll just be something new to budget for.
Yeah. Very good. Well, Karen, thank you. I know you put some time and work into all this, and we appreciate you coming, obviously for the meetings, but also sharing this with us, because I do think it's very valuable to keep us in line. But I appreciate that.
And
Oh.
it says connection is unstable.
Okay, well, that's what happens
Oh,
from
no,
time
it
to
came
time.
back.
Okay, good. All right. Terry, did you have any questions for Karen? Everything good? Okay. All right. The next item on the agenda is new business, and it is website discussion. Stacy?
We currently do not have our own elections website. We use the county's website, and the county has been, very good to us by letting us do that. But the person who designs and runs a portion of the county website does not live within the country. She lives in another country. So sometimes being able to get something on the website as quickly as we need to be is a task. And when it's something that Graham can put on there, he does it immediately as quick as he can get to it. But we have to put the statistical report daily either on our website, or we have to put it where it can be seen at our office by 10 o'clock during early voting. And I just worry, right now we're posting it outside of our office, but I worry with that and then things to come, even minutes, if we were to have our own website that I would be able to maintain and put things on as quickly as needed, that we wouldn't ever run into possibly an SEB case against us for violating the code and not having something on there as quickly as what we should. So I have reached out and I have got a quote to have our website designed for us. And it is an estimated cost that can be customizable to our needs. This is just an overall broad range of what can be done. And I would like the board to have discussion on if they think this is something that they would like me to proceed with further.
I have one question. Can we keep the website on the county
Yes.
with a redirect to the new website?
What we would do is I would still have Graham post notices, anything about dates that I would normally have him post.
Okay.
And then there would be a link, like we have to our campaign finance page on the county website, there would be a link to this website. This would just be, like I said, minutes or the statistical report, anything that needs to be posted quickly. I would be able to do that myself instead of having to send it out and have someone else do it for us.
Okay. So looking at the estimated costs, if you can, help me out here. So we obviously would need the page designed.
Yes.
Okay. Maintenance, is that something then that we would need or not need? And same thing with the hosting service. Just tell me which of these, is this everything that we would need? Is there additional things? What do you see that would need to be there or
Yes,
not?
please.
Well, full disclosure, I'm the one to get a quote because that's what I do as well. So you're going to have the website hosted. So you actually have to have a name, which is a very small charge, I think, and then you have to have it hosted, which is just really like on a computer. So the domain knows to look there. You always have to keep those things. And then the maintenance would really be, I know I meant to look at it, is if you need someone to make the changes for you. But we could set it up in a different way. I can't remember if I did it that way. I thought today, and I was going to check, where it's in like a Google workspace or something like that, where they could go in. That's easy, a content management where they could update themselves. Or I could even make places like that where it's like a little form, and they could do simple things, not the whole website. So there's just, it's just really, with what you would need with that.
Right. Okay.
Everything's customized. It's so hard to really quote that. Those are such vague things because, a page might take 2 seconds or it's 3 lines. Obviously, that was not going to be charged a lot,
Right.
Whereas if you had to do something special, programming,
Well, if
whatnot,
you're working on it, whoever's working on it, money needs to be paid to whoever it is that is doing the
Right.
work for the website, obviously.
But you don't have to have that, like if they're updating it, it could
If
just
they're
be
yeah.
developed, done, or unless something happens, you can call, and then it could be like hourly, if you need
Right.
something like that.
Okay. Very good.
Did I answer all your questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Anyone have any other questions about a website or discussion about a website?
I think it's an awesome idea.
What's,
Yeah.
Terry does. Hold on. Hold on, Terry, can't hear you, let me see if it's, try now. Okay, I got you, go ahead.
I just read the part where it's near, it's still in this, but, we need more than one bid.
Do we need to have more than one bid? She said, are we required to get more than one bid?
I'm actually not sure about the county's purchase policy, I'll have to look.
So the attorney says that she's not sure about the county's purchase policy and she would have to look for that to give us an answer because she doesn't know it off the top of her head.
And this, I'm not asking for a board vote tonight, I'm just asking for discussion, and if the board would like me to move further with looking
Okay.
into this.
So Stacy's also not looking for an actual vote tonight, just wants to know if it is something that that the board feels she should continue to pursue and look at so she could get additional bids if need be. Terry's nodding her head yes, so I assume that means Terry is on board with getting a website up and going.
She was still talking.
She thinks we would need more than one bid, so just for sake of,
It's probably better anyway.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I already know I'm
I
probably
can't speak
lower
for
than
Pickens,
anybody.
With all my years at Cobb, we had to have 3
yeah,
on everything.
yeah. So,
So once the webpage is designed, then someone like yourself or someone that you've trained
I
can
would
go in
be-
and make updates to the website.
Yes.
And if there's any complications with whatever changes that you're looking for or functionality, then you would be looking at services to improve that functionality so that you can move forward with the next.
all right. I think it's an excellent idea. I think the more that we can keep the voters informed and let everybody have access to the information, the less open records requests potentially, the less, concern, confusion, what have you, by the voters and the general public of what and how the office is handling everything.
And that
So,
was one of the things too, is, other counties, and I've looked at Paulding County, I've looked at Bartow County, they put a lot of their information on their website to cut down on open records. I
Absolutely.
don't do that on the county's page because I don't want to bombard our page and not make it user-friendly to the public when they're trying to find something. But if we had our own page, we could have, a tab to where they could go just to, like, the results of an election, or just to, the minutes. And then when they reached out to us for open records, we could always direct them to our webpage and eliminate us having to take the time to produce those records.
But it would be, my hope would be that in the design of the webpage, that you could add those hyperlinks to whatever those documents are,
Yes.
or subjects, or items that
Yes.
easier for you to do without asking someone to do maintenance. That's when it gets real crazy, price-wise.
But just one more labor load on your people and everything. I'm a little concerned about that because some of those can take a lot of maintenance, particularly as the election comes up, they can get really busy. So just, factor that in. And I don't know, Mary, no disrespect at all.
No,
in
no,
any way, shape,
I mean,
or form.
y'all don't even have to use
Since-
me, like I said, I do know
Right.
Pickens or whatever, but she need to put in a quote, and that's what I do on the
Yes.
side, that's
But-
fine.
And you probably do a fantastic job, no question. I just want to make sure that's not a conflict of interest in any way. Since she's here
No,
with us.
she's
No.
a
Well, I
contract.
did
She's
contract-
not,
well,
we
because-
contract her for this, yeah.
Oh, I
And
see
record
then.
the meetings.
That's the reason why, I was just discussing with her I was giving her what I was looking for.
Right.
And she had me a quote so I could kind of talk to you about what I was looking at doing, but we contract her out for this
Okay.
already.
So she's already a vendor.
She's already
Yes.
our
Okay, I wasn't aware
vendor.
of that,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes.
No, no, it's
The new
fine.
guy,
She-
Well, no, I'm very confusing because again, I do the city of Jasper and Talking Rock and Nelson, so, and then I know Pickens, so it's kind of confusing. It's
And
not-
that's why,
I know that.
if she were to do this, it would be just an added service to what we already contract her for.
Okay.
Exactly.
that saves time setting up vendors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
Exactly.
there might be somebody that specializes in election sites, which would be better for y'all too. Like I said, I'm not, whatever's best for y'all. Like I said, I was just,
Right.
I have other things going on. I gave her a quote to help out too,
Yeah.
so.
Well, we
No
appreciate that you
problem.
put the time and energy into doing that quote, and obviously we will have to see if we're obligated, but it sounds like the board says to go with getting a total of 3 bids, so if you have,
We'll check the policy.
they're gonna double check the
Yeah.
policy, since she's already an established vendor too, it may work out, I don't know how that goes, but, if you want to pursue it, I think it would be an excellent idea. Becky, did you have any thoughts?
I'm just gonna ask, what is this,
I'll get to that whenever I do my
Yeah.
comments.
It's the first
this is the one
time.
that- what
So-
you're thinking about?
So does everybody think that it would be of value to the voters and to Pickens County to have Stacy Pickens County voters to have Stacy research this a little further, I think, about the website?
I do,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
All right, awesome. So Stacy, when you have a moment. And Karen, when you have a chance to let us know if we have to have those 3 bids, I would appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Mary. I appreciate you getting that to her too. So, awesome. All right, the next item on the agenda is staff comments. So Stacy, have at it.
We are hoping to start LNA testing next week for the May election. We're not sure when exactly we're going to get our files from the state, but we did receive our ballots yesterday. So we are hoping to get started with that next week. We've got poll worker training scheduled on the 15th through the 17th. Any board member that wants to participate in working the lunch shift to let poll workers take turns going to lunch will have to have the board member training in order to do so. We're going to have
Poll worker
poll
training.
worker training. We're gonna do poll worker training on the 15th at 6 p.m. at my office. We're gonna do it on the 16th at 10 a.m. at my office. And the 17th at 6 p.m. at my office.
The 15th was at 6 p.m. too.
The
Did
15th
you
was
get
at
those
6,
times,
the
Terry?
16th was at 10, and the 17th was at
Sorry,
6.
I lost you. Did you say yes, you got the times?
Not the time, but if you already had the training this year, you have to go in.
Yes, before
because it's
every
another
election,
before every election.
We have to have training. The only time that you're omitted from doing that is during a runoff.
For every election, you have to go through it again.
Yes, ma'am, even the poll workers do.
Really?
Mhm.
So if you went to training in February for the March election, you still have to do training before the May election. And then the flyer that you have is a flyer that Mary designed for me. She designs my flyers before the election. I give her all the important dates, and she does these wonderful flyers for us to put out to the public and also put on our county website. And then if we were to get our own website, this is the same kind of content that we would be putting on there as well. But I just gave one to each one of the board members so that she would have the dates coming up for the upcoming election. And we will start early voting on the 29th of April, and it will go for 3 weeks again, 17 days, 2 Saturdays before the May 21st election.
So this absentee voting has already started? Says March 4th?
That is the
To apply.
earliest you can apply
Oh,
for an absentee.
okay.
And then the first day that we can mail a ballot is the 22nd. And then, like Karen had said, UACAVA, we could start sending out today.
Okay.
State, is it there, after the absentee, then it has the last day to register or change. Is that also the March 4th date, or is that a separate day?
That's the same day.
Same day?
Both of
Okay.
those fall on the same
Same
day.
day. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. All right. Okay. Any other comments or anything?
Myself and my staff are just gearing up to get ready for this upcoming election.
Will you, once we have committed to doing the training, then you will do like you did last time with staggering us to help cover the early voting lunch?
Once we find out which board members come to training, and once we start working on the list of poll workers to work early vote, then we will start working on a list of board members. I don't think we're gonna need two like we had in March, because we didn't have the turnout to have two. I think we'll be okay with one. And then if for some reason we were to get really busy, then we could, add a second person, and then definitely in November, we'll probably need the two.
Okay. Anyone have any other questions for Stacy?
I have one comment. I don't know if it's appropriate time.
We're gonna do public comments. Board comments is last, so, yeah. Sorry, so, okay. All right, so next item on the agenda then is public comments.
No comment, except y'all do a great job.
Thank you, I appreciate that, and appreciate you coming, so. All right, so now, moving on to board comments. Rick, I'll start with you.
I really don't have any comments. I appreciate the little training session that we had. And Stacy, I'll need to talk to you about some dates that I'm going to be out.
Okay. Yeah, I'll send out an email to the board and let them know what the dates are, and then they can email back with their availability, and we'll plug it in as needed.
Perfect. All right, Ed.
Right. We discussed briefly on the phone the other day some information that I had that Stacy's done some research on. Apparently this was a draft that may not have occurred. It's not currently in the statute. I was not aware of that, but I have to provide each of you with a copy of it so you can look at it. I don't want to confuse anybody. How do you feel about that?
What
She has a copy.
exactly?
Anybody?
Here, I'll hand it over to him. Terry, we'll get you a copy of this. I'm not quite sure what was mentioned on the phone. Ed had asked me about was about legislation about the handling of audits. But I don't think this is not how a bill looks, so I'm assuming this was not an official bill that was passed. But I'll get you a copy of it. So this is what you were mentioning to me.
That's correct.
And where do we know where this originated from?
It came through on the bottom there, the Conservative
Real
Alliance,
Alliance,
but on the top there, it says the Georgia State Board of Elections. So I think it came through them in some way or form.
Okay. So, well, and obviously, do you have a copy of this, Karen?
I don't have this one.
Yeah, that's
So-
Okay, she just gave me a copy.
Okay.
So, and I'll look at it. And also, I haven't looked at all the election bills.
Uh-huh.
I do know one of them that passed makes official, I guess, that county board, so you have to do your state required audit.
Uh-huh.
And the state will tell you count whatever, 10%, 15%, whatever.
Right.
It does state that, county boards can do more races after you've done your state audit. I believe it has to still be done before the state certification, but,
So the board could opt to do additional audits?
yes,
If
so
after we do
you
the,
still have to make sure to do the
Okay.
states, and I think they want you to do theirs first.
okay,
But if the board says, okay, well, they had us do this race and this race at 20%, the board can always vote to, and I think that's the case now.
That
The
is
board
the
can
case now.
vote. It's just not written in the code, so that the new bill writes that in the code, that the
Okay.
board can say, okay, well, we had to
Do
do
you know what-
20%, we're not gonna do 50%.
do you know what number that is, that it had it in, just off the top?
The bill,
Yeah,
I think I have it in my email, hold on, let me just double check.
And Ed, I think you said that you thought that this was done after 2022. This wouldn't be new legislation.
No, not this year. Yes, it was.
This
done in
would have been
response-
something in the past that you
Right.
think.
That's right.
Okay.
It was response to the Moore lawsuit. And
it's referring to the lawsuit, which, like I said, we've already, that was handled and that matter was resolved a while ago. So if this came out of that, like just in a discussion form, it hasn't made it to the point of being a bill, but maybe it could be something like Karen said that was brought up.
Right.
To
And we
be-
looked, well, when Ed was at the office, we looked up House Bill 682, and it was passed by the House and Senate in 2021, and it was signed in 2021, and there has been no amendments to that. So if the board would like me to send them a copy of House Bill 682, I'll be happy to do that as well. But that's the bill that enacted our new board, because the old board was dissolved, and 682 is what formed our new board.
Right.
But
this,
there has not been any amendments to that.
Okay.
but this mentions Representative Jasper's here from Pickens County that this, like I say, I think was some proposed changes that,
Well,
according to what we read today.
Representative Jaspers is who introduced
It's the
682
682,
to
yeah.
legislation.
Yeah. Did you have something, Rick? I saw you.
No, I'm fine now.
Okay.
As far as the audits, I think it's an HB 974.
This year's, Tara,
Yes.
did you hear that House Bill 974 potentially from this year?
I
Maybe.
think that's,
That
I
it-
know it increases the number of offices that are audited. I do know that. I think that's also the same section where it says boards can vote to audit more. Also, that bill says ballots have to have a watermark and be on security type paper.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that in any way change, because if we have to certify in 3 days, I mean, how many audits can you do?
You don't do an
No,
audit
it's-
before you certify. You
it's
do
after.
an audit
I'm sorry.
after
Okay.
you certify.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So
it
we
has
have-
to be done before the
State
states.
certification. So we have 3 days to do a certification after the election. And then we have, if it is a race, or if it's an audit that the state requires us to do, it's normally performed the following week on the Wednesday after the election. But it does say that we have to conduct the audit before state certification, but the state tells us when we do that audit.
And procedurally, it would be state audit before local audit.
Yes.
So we can't change that either because that's what's
I
written.
don't think so.
Okay.
And plus, I mean, the state needs those uploaded
Right.
and everything else. And again, they change the percentage based on how close the race is. So
Right.
that audit percentage is not set in the law. It is some statistical, mathematical stuff that is handled
Right.
behind the scenes.
Right.
So the closer the race, the more, so it may not even make sense to do any additional percentage if you're already,
Within it,
counting
yeah.
85 or 90%.
Well, especially
Yeah.
because we know that there's a cost affixed to doing the audits too, so we have to obviously, I've told Stacy that we're going by what the book says, and there's a new bill that introduces something, obviously, and if this is part of what has now been attached to House Bill 974 potentially, then, obviously, we'll have to look at that and see where we go from there, but, yeah. We're still gonna follow what the state requires first, I got that, so, that, absolutely, I've said that, that's my thing for sure.
As
so.
far as our audits go, I know I've talked to Ed and to Becky and to Jackie about this, but Rick, we don't decide which race that we audit, and we don't decide which precincts we audit. All of that is handled through a third-party company, which is Arlo. The Secretary of State contracts with them. We upload our results into Arlo's website after the election, and we don't even know, we know the day before which race we're going to audit, but we don't even know which batches we're gonna audit until we get there that morning. So that's how we go about doing our audits, and it has to be, I want to say, it's at a 5% threshold right now, and if that law is signed and the legislation signed into law, then it will go down to it has to be within a 2%.
I can't remember.
I believe
Yeah.
so.
So it changes the percentage too?
I think so.
Wow.
And it actually
Increases
increases.
the number of races you'll do.
Yes, so, so it provides not just like one rate, it's like one, I forget, it increases the number. So the audit's already gonna be getting bigger.
So it could reduce the need for the
Potential.
local board
Yeah,
to make
so-
any additional.
but yeah, so it's
Gotcha. Okay.
definitely going to require more ballots because it's reducing that probability, whatever,
Right.
behind the scenes, mathematical, and then, it's increasing the number of races to be audited, so it's already upping that.
Right.
And right now, the Secretary of State's office decides what race that we're gonna audit, but they normally, from what I have seen, they normally choose like either the largest race or the most controversial race to have
Or the
us.
closest
Yes, or the
margin.
closest margin, to have us audit.
But
They did the roll of the dice, they said, down at the
Well,
Secretary
yeah,
of
I
State.
think that's how they pick the precincts and batches.
Well, that-
Is it
it's-
rolling the dice?
They roll the dice, and the number of dice that they roll, they put into the computer, and that kick starts the random number of batches to draw from.
Oh,
So,
well, I think that having the audits is a great tool, 100%. So if they're increasing them, they're increasing them. Obviously, we just gotta have more people or ready to count more people who are ready to count more. However you want to say
Yeah.
that.
Here we go
So,
with another
but
personnel
that,
budget.
but that bill, that 974, that definitely talks about the audits and increased races and
Okay.
stuff like that. And also the new security paper, which means everyone has to get rid of the paper they already have.
Do you know, based on your quick glance, is that security paper required this year now?
I think it goes into effect July 1st, assuming it doesn't get vetoed.
so they,
Assuming it was July 1st.
Yeah.
they have actually reached out to all the election offices to ask what their stock is on that paper, because so many people have, like us, have bought up that paper. And they don't, it's $60 a ream, so they don't want us losing money from going ahead and purchasing that paper ahead of time. So I think they're trying to work something out to where we would be able to use the paper that we have before we were required to go to having the watermark on the paper, because the paper already has, it's security paper and it already has a seal, but you just can't see it. It's invisible to the naked eye. But this would require a watermark that you would be able to see.
Gotcha. All right.
And I think, one last thing, I'm sorry, I beat it to death, but I think it removes the QR code as well? Is that the same thing?
After
20.
January 1st, 2026, yes.
Okay.
QR code goes away,
Yeah.
but not
And
yet.
I forget which bill it is, I think it might be 189.
Okay. All right. Lots of changes, like you
Lots
said,
of changes.
lots of changes.
There were about 7 or 8 various bills, so.
And they all but waited till probably about the last day too.
I know the biggest one was the last day.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll have some more reading to do. We caught up on our stuff.
Absolutely.
Becky, do you have any board comment?
No.
Terry, how about you? No, Terry says no. Okay. So, well, I just want to say thank you again to Karen for coming and giving us our presentation, and Stacy, you and the staff, as always, for all the work that you do. I appreciate you guys for sticking with it despite, long days, that's for sure. So, thank you. And on that note, the last item on the agenda is for a motion to adjourn. Does anybody want to make one, or shall
Make a
I?
motion to adjourn.
Rick's got it. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Terry voted in favor, yes. Terry, thank you for joining us. Best of luck with the grandbabies. Thank you all so much. Meeting adjourned.